Hi guys, welcome to another video of mine. This one's going to be a bit different. I am going to be more in like a video essay format and be talking about my analysis of this movie. And spoiler warning ahead, I will be involving some spoilers of this movie. And I am in the holiday spirit. Halloween is very soon. I might post this on Halloween, so if it's Halloween when I post this, happy Halloween. And also I just want to kind of go for like that vampire vibe. I've been consuming a lot of vampire content lately, so it's been a great year so far. This is my favorite movie of all time, and it only came out this year. Sinners, which is written and directed by Ryan Coogler, the cinematography by Autumn Dorald Arkapaw, and the music by Ludwig Göransson. So I have my notes in front of me, and I'm just going to be talking about my love for Sinners as both a consumer and fellow filmmaker, as well as a brief film history, world history, and the effects of what I consider a toxic film bro mindset mentality, if you will, when it comes to certain fan reviews as well. And I want to preface by saying I am not going to try and be a spokesperson for any of the communities I am going to be mentioning throughout this video and act like I know the true depths of what it's like to be part of these communities. I'm simply regurgitating things I've learned and draw from my own personal experience, as well as like my overall analysis of the movie. So yeah, like later on, I'm going to be drawing from my own experience and how I think toxic film fan mentality can actually hurt us creators of color. With that being said, let's dive into part one. Nobody cares. Have you ever wondered why Sinners uses vampires? Why they intertwine fictional horror? Simply because no one cares. So, in order to show a story by people of color for people of color, in this case specifically black stories, you have to intertwine a fictional genre or narrative in order for it to be told. You have to make it palpable, spoon feedable to audiences, because from the regular people like you and I that fill the seats to the companies behind the films, no one's ever really cared for these kinds of stories before. So, in order to get them in their seats and stay in their seats, you kind of have to weave in this fictional narrative in order for them to even fathom something so horrible happening to another human being. And this isn't new either. So let me introduce you to somebody called Rod Serling. So Rod Serling was a very popular TV screenwriter within the 50s and 60s with the show The Twilight Zone. Rod Serling's stories have a political undertone to them, woven into the science fiction genre. The kind of politics that are seen as woke, which is probably why you haven't heard film bros talk about him a lot. And here is a quote from one of the professors in my online course. He was able to tell stories of racism, sexism, communism, but put them in the guise of science fiction. And according to Alec Brown, Serling tried to make a film about the events that happened to Emmett Till, but when the studios got to it, they completely changed it and made it into more of like a Latino story. And obviously, as a Latina, this is crazy, because obviously with that dramatic change, he became frustrated, and it wasn't the story he was trying to or wanted to tell. And I seriously, like, it baffles me. Like, I can't believe that, what took place, because we can't erase one another in order to make room for representation for other people, other groups. So fast forward, this is like the 80s or 90s. I'm talking about science fiction became a huge genre, and this is actually the genre that jump started Will Smith's career, according to the lesson that I had learned, because people weren't paying attention to his skin color or the way he looked. It was more of the world his character was inserted to, and that already had a huge fan base already. And I don't think a lot of people realize how new everything truly is. I'm talking the representation that we're getting in film and TV, to literally the invention of the first camera to our cell phones, and as well as just the kind of politics that are in creative spaces, which just so happen to be a little more left leaning. And I'm not trying to be a political content creator, nor do I want to be. But I do agree with the statement that art is inherently political. And also, it's not my fault that us as people of color, our mere existence became a stance. And, I can go on all day about this, specifically literally the reason why we have our cell phones, the reason why we can record on our cell phones is quite literally because of the World War. But that's a story for a different time. So let's get into part two, scenes of significance. I am so blessed to be on the same timeline that Sinners exists because this movie has brought together so many different communities. And I just want to go into some of my favorite scenes and as well as a few historical contexts for those who didn't pay attention in history class. So this will be kind of like a long segment as well. So let's dive right into it. If you see me looking down, these are my notes that I have. So let's get into it. So we open with Annie narrating, and she speaks about how powerful music can be. And despite the differences in culture, there is a shared belief that it can connect us with our future and past ancestors. And this is kind of where I think Film Bros just tuned out because she clearly talks about three different cultures, that being West African culture, Choctaw culture, and Irish culture. And as we continue to film, we see it become more apparent, as well as themes of religious trauma within the interaction of Sammy and his father, but we'll definitely come back to that. So let's cover some American history for some context. So Sinners takes place in the 1930s, which is where Jim Crow laws, segregation, were enforced. And we see this perfectly with one of my favorite shots in the movie where Lisa Chow walks across the street from her father Bo's store to her mother Grace's, showing the segregation between the two stores and their customer demographics, but it also brilliantly shows how other ethnicities, specifically in this case Chinese Americans, are sort of stuck in the middle when it comes to these racist laws. It's the same deal for us Latinos during these times as well. And if you think about it, Latino and Asian communities have a lot of similarities. And in this case, none of us were white enough to be on the same page as the white man or in the same space as them. Throughout the film, we get to see how real this film truly is. And I honestly went in thinking that it's going to be a jump scary horror film and just kind of, fighting off or hunting down monsters, so that being vampires. But at the same time, I still expected depth from it because it is Ryan Coogler. But when I sat down in that theater and saw it for the first time, it exceeded any expectations I had on it, and I'm so grateful. I'm so and it's literally like we what we got was even better and exceeded any expectations that I had. We have scenes like Delta Slim retelling the events that happened, that led to his friend's lynching, and we get heart wrenching audio played in the background as well. And I think this was brilliantly done as well because we don't see what's happening. We have to rely on that audio, perhaps even our own imagination, and just feel the weight of his words, because these are real life situations that can go unseen and very often than not unheard. We're also introduced to characters like Annie, which is my favorite character of the film, and we watch how she preserves her culture and the practice of hoodoo. Despite Smoke not really wanting to believe in it, we see that in their conversation before she reblesses his mojo bag, and which is actually something I didn't know about until I watched this film. But I put two and two together and realized that it's something to protect and repel bad or evil energy. And we also get to understand that their relationship with each other and that they had actually lost a child previously. We're also introduced to characters like Mary, who is a biracial woman, and she previously had a connection to the Smoke and Stack twins, and even a romance with Stack. And at the same time, we have to remember this is the 1930s. Interracial relationships can be punishable by law. And, even Mary's own existence being biracial could put a huge target on her back if other white folk found out that she was biracial. We also learned that she recently lost her mother, and which very could well be her remaining family. And, we see how she longs for that familial connection and a reconnection with Stack. And of course, I will talk about my girl Perlene in just a second, but that's going to be later on, okay? I don't trust me. I got you. I got you. So, and I also have to say, Mr. Kugler, if you will, I feel like he did an amazing job of showing these romantic relationships because one thing I personally don't like seeing, unnecessary nudity within horror films, and obviously Sinners had sexually explicit scenes. It didn't last for like an eternity, and it didn't boil down the female character just to that exact moment. So, thank you. Now, here is where we're getting into my favorite detail of the entire film. Okay, this truly set the tone for me when I watched it the first time. And I want you to pay attention to these two different sequences, okay? The first one being when the twins buy land for their juke, and two, Remic's arrival. Earlier in the movie, the twins plan to purchase land for their juke, and we watch them as they wait for the current owner to arrive and sell it to them. Little do we know that is actually one of the leaders for a certain hate group that is mentioned in this movie. And so for this sequence, this detail can easily go unnoticed, because you might just think it's a part of the environment. So if you look closely, right behind the clan leader as he arrives, there is a large bird that follows him. And I think after this, we cut to the twins, and in the background, there is another bird or one or two birds that are there in the background as well. And this supposedly small detail, again, like I said earlier, truly set the entire tone for me for the film, and I loved it so much. As a Mexican Peruvian, I've of course learned different folklore from both cultures. And if you're Mexican, you're probably going to know what I'm going to be talking about, that being la lechuza or lechuzas. So, and I believe indigenous cultures share similar folklore, but essentially lechuzas are large birds, often an owl, that serve as a bad omen and are attracted to evil energy, and kind of just are a sign that evil energy resides in the area. And so, let's see. And so, keeping that in mind, this actually ties into the scene that comes after the sequence where one of the twins asks if the floors of the building have been cleaned, because there's obviously blood still marked onto the floor, like kind of like steeped into the wood. And also where the clan leader or the owner of the land says, "The clan don't exist no more." And because now we know what lechuzas are and like how they signal bad omens, we know that he's lying, and also that that land is tainted, that something horrible has happened.
Y'all wash these floors? Yeah. What was on them? And if we see you or any one of your clan buddies cross our property line, we gonna kill them right where they stand. Shit. Clan don't exist no more.
And fun fact, my mother has actually had her own experience with lechuzas, but that's a story for a different time. But pretty much from my family, can also be associated with vultures because of the stigma they already carry, and also that they're essentially attracted to death. And considering that they put in the credits that they did use live animals, and so that just proved my point when I watched it for the first time, because it honestly shocked me to see that kind of folklore on the big screen, and it just, the respect that I have for Ryan Coogler just imploded, and it just made it overflow, because it's honestly such a cool detail. And this is going to the second sequence, it's even more apparent. The second sequence is Remic's arrival. We are seemingly transported to the middle of nowhere, and we are introduced to the vampire Remic, Choctaw vampire hunters, and a couple that resides in the house, which just so happens to be tied to a certain white hooded hate group. And we watch how Remic convinces them to let him in. He's injured from the sun, and he weaves a story of how they killed his wife, and he shows them obviously a very old gold coin, and this was my indication that Remick could either be ancient or just European. He was both. And I want you to pay attention to the sequence, because this is probably the biggest in your face detail of Letrusas. So before Remick arrives, there's no birds in the sky, there's nothing hovering over the house. The couple lets him in, and we get the shot of the vampire hunters coming to the house, and we see three birds hover over the house. Okay, and as I said before, now we know what lechuzas are. We now know that there is an evil inside of that house. Going back to what I said before, I believe indigenous cultures share that similar belief of owls being a bad omen, or rather an omen of death. And the Choctaw know that Remick is in there. They know his true intentions and his true form. But of course, the woman who answers the door, she doesn't heed his warning. And so one of the men in his group signals that the sun is going down, and they get out of there. And if you take anything from this scene or from this video, is to always listen to what nature is trying to tell you.
Ikaw kilo kayo sa autos pa tsuka kilona.
Chihoya, Chiapisa, Chitakla, ay Chigi.
So I feel like I've been talking a lot for this segment, so I'm gonna try to run through these last 2 points I have. So, as I said before, of letting or paying attention to nature and listening to it, I feel like that also ties into Perlene's character because she is such another like a strong female character in this film. And if you pay attention to the lyrics of her song "Pale Pale Moon," you you get this other look into her of not just her as a person, but obviously with the black community during this time of like she talks about the similarities of wanting to be free as as a bird or as a cat, and like as the animals in the wilderness and wanting to be naturally free. And I've seen a lot of fan theories as well, kind of thinking of that each character represents a different sin because they are sinners, and they think that Perline represents um the sin of lust. And I think I can get behind that as well because we do see that she mentions having a husband, but yet getting into some of a relationship with Sammy. And you know she is she is just a strong female character, like although like if her character is to represent that, her writing doesn't boil her down to those exact moments or to those exact actions as well. And I really appreciate that as well because you may not think that you know for a female character that's supposed to represent that, especially in a horror film and from a male director, you could expect like a completely different image from her or of her. And I really appreciate that as well. And so I just love Perlene as well. The other scene I want to cover is, or detail, is the themes of religious trauma. So we see the interactions between Sam and his father being a pastor and wanting him to put down the guitar quite literally and like, you know, cover up that interest that he has and that passion that he has for music. And we also see Sammy want to be somebody. He wants to you know get away from the plantation, his hometown, and like wants to be like the twins and be known for something. And we kind of go into more in depth of, again, going back to Annie's narration, we see this beautifully done scene. And here's the thing, like when I watched it for the first time, and I just took it all in because it was the scene where literally in my head I need them to sweep the Oscars with this scene alone. And I think I heard that that song that he performs, "I Lied to You," is hopefully going to get like a nomination or is like submitted to the Oscars. And I literally, this whole scene literally just like it blew me away. I just had to take everything in because so much is said throughout this song, visually, musically, and you know, with the music by Ludwig Göransson, he did an amazing job because he mixed together completely different music genres, different types of music. But obviously, we all know that certain music and certain trends do stem from the black community and their culture. And so tying in all those things together and showing them and how they connect with the past and the future was brilliant. And what really like kind of like solidified it for me is that not only are they showing everyone at the jukes like their ancestors, but they showed traditional Chinese culture as well, and involving the chows there. And it was just a beautiful mixture of culture, identity, music. And so from the scene we also get to see a deeper lens to Remick. And this is where I'm going to talk about in the third part as well, where I genuinely feel like if you didn't pay attention to, like, you didn't even have to pay attention to the movie, you literally just have to watch it and just absorb it, listen to it, to know that that exact scene, that exact reason is why Remick wants Sammy and wants him for himself, and why he creates this, you know, coven of vampires, and trying to make his own group of people. And it's, I'll cover it in the other segment as well, as why I think some people's takes on this is odd, because we see Remick go and obviously with he actually turned the couple from before I mentioned before. It's the three of them, and they turn Mary, they turn a lot of the members of the community, and he creates this huge group of people, and they begin to sing an Irish song. And so what many don't know is that the Irish were actually colonized by the British. I believe within, I want to say, the 12th century. um, so they were colonized, and it is also the result of the famine that you may have heard of, the potato famine, as we're taught here in America. And some people might not think that you know this community, that majority of white people as well, can be colonized by the British, but they literally, the effects of colonization is very horrid and heartbreaking, because not only do you lose parts of your culture, you lose your language. And that is something I've heard, that for a few Irish people, they don't really speak their native language, or it's like dying out, where it's not as spoken before. And as people of color, we can relate to that because of the effects of colonization. They don't stop at the gold, they don't stop at the land, they don't stop at to our own genetics. They won't even stop until our own voices are removed. And it's a very heavy topic. And the fact that no one really knows about the colonization of Ireland. So seeing this in a film this big was very new and very fresh, and very eye opening. So now we know that, with the song that they're performing, with Remick and his, artificial coven, that he's trying to create that familial sense. Because, if we go back to when he was trying to let the couple, trying to convince them to let him in, um, he talks about how they killed his wife, and this could very well play into losing his family because of the colonization of Ireland, and looking for that familial connection. Like, this movie is super, like it's has so many different layers. I don't even think I can cover everything in this video, because I keep getting different ideas and details I want to talk about. But pretty much, Remick is after that. He wants to see his family again. He wants Sammy, because Sammy's musical talent, and the way he's able to connect ancestors, and what Remick saw, that is why he wants Sammy. And so fast forward to the ending fight, we see how, you know, when Sammy, he's scared, then Remick is holding him, and he starts reciting a Bible verse. And it seeing hearing Remick recite that same verse, you because it is so written out, like literally in your face. And he says that, oh, like, I know this too, it's brought me much pain, but it's actually bright that I forget his proper line, but pretty much saying that it's actually brought me some comfort. And
Long ago, the man who stole my father's land forced these words upon us. I hated those men, but the words still bring me comfort.
because literally, and this is something I can go into as well, because I'm super into learning English. And pretty much, call it the results of colonization, horrid as it is also the spread of Christianity. And the spread of Christianity was supposed to, built specifically for in the Dark Ages, supposed to be this optimistic side of thinking, of like, oh, there is a paradise after death. Specifically for like in the Viking times of history and stuff. I'm trying not to go too deep into it, but pretty much colonizers used Christianity as, they weaponized Christianity in a way to control people. And so obviously, knowing that Ireland was colonized, and pushed into Christianity, they made, because there's obviously different deities and different gods in different countries, and cultures. So they kind of just put down their how do you say, like, destabilize like whatever hierarchy that they had to involve the Christian God and Christian way, where it this one's more powerful than what your culture is.
Those men lied to themselves and lied to us. They told stories of a God above and a devil below, and lies of a dominion of man over beast and earth.
So seeing that interaction with Sammy and Remick, it really did something to me because even there's still people today like you and me, you watching this, you may know people who've experienced religious trauma, and there's people in my family as well where although we're not religious, there are certain aspects of that religion that can bring us comfort, despite the abuse that came with it, and I just think the writing, the cinematography, and the music for this is so powerful, and it really sends a good message and a beautiful message. And here is where I'm going to get into where I can't comprehend certain reviews of Sinners because it's quite literally in your face. So, this is the third and final part, fan review hierarchy. So, unfortunately, with recent discourse on Twitter and my own personal experience with a white person saying that Sinners is not even worth 5 stars on Letterbox, let alone be in my Letterbox top four, I believe we as a community and as a society, we're losing the ability to read in between the lines. I personally think Sinners is very in your face, and you literally have to be blind to not see the themes that they're representing. And I also grew up on animation, and you wouldn't think that an animated movie about robots would have themes of the American dream, making your parents, trying to make your parents proud because of how much they sacrificed for you, and capitalism.
I'm Fender. We used to be Bumper, but had to change it when we came into the country.
Copper Bottom. Rodney Copper.
Yeah, Robots 2005. Go rewatch it. And, I think the discourse on Twitter was stemmed from like a post someone made that the review was like a 1 star or like 1.5 stars, and that their comment was something revolving around that the writing was bad, and like just stupid things like that. And then if you go to their letterbox, they rated the Minecraft movie like 5 stars. Yeah. So here's where I think it gets, you know, toxic and harmful, because obviously, like, people are entitled to their own opinions, but I think except when you're wrong, it kind of goes a different route, because again, there's people saying that, like, oh, like, of course a white person wouldn't understand Sinners, even though it's quite literally in your face, like I said. And I had to look up the term film bro because it is used often, and I honestly feel like it's become an aesthetic almost. So the term film bro is actually a derogatory slang term for specifically a male movie fan, that has a narrow, often pretentious view of cinema. And that is quite literally how it is. But from my own, especially from my own experience with somebody, and it's because the way I say, okay, the reason why I say it's become an aesthetic is because the way someone may format their social media account and the things that they talk about, it might seem like they're super into film in an analysis way and thinking that, like, they know the true meaning of this, but in reality they aren't, if that makes sense. So I'm not saying that you have to be like, you have to go to film school and you have to know all these directors in order for you to leave a review. Of course not. Like, you use Letterbox as as you want, and go on with your day. But where I think it gets toxic is because when it comes to movies by people of color, for people of color, these voices, these kinds of reviews are tend to be the loudest. And studios see these kinds of reviews, and often, more like, more than not, listen to the white voices that are watching these, and that can hurt us creators of color, because that just, like I said before, we have to intertwine fiction to our own stories in order to be told. And, you know, it just proves my point with some of these reviews where it's, oh, it's only a sexy vampire movie, and oh my god, like these people are so hot, but like honestly, yeah, that part can be true, but at the same time, it's not just about that, you know? It's not just about the vampires, it's about literally telling what could have been someone's real, story. And, it hurts me whenever I see those kinds of reviews because, you know, like I said, studios see these things, they see the interaction that these films get, and, you know, with these being the loudest voices, these white voices that are outside and inside the studios, it can definitely affect how much of these stories get pushed out, how much they can change, um, and the involvement of fiction rather it being more of a real life story. But pretty much the point I'm trying to make is if you think criticizing a movie to oblivion, tearing it apart in a letterbox comment section is going to make you a better filmmaker, it isn't. Because, and honestly, this is just something personal with me too, because a lot of these people idolize directors that, were obviously, I'm not saying, I'm, I'm going to preface this by saying I don't have any opinion because I don't really know these directors. I haven't really watched their work. I do know that they are classic directors and iconic within like, film courses. And I actually watched this one video that, explains this topic perfectly. Um, but I think what separates me myself as a creative from the rest of, usual film school attendees is that I haven't really watched films from Scorsese, or I haven't watched Pulp Fiction. I haven't watched The Godfather, And these like and honestly some of these movies I don't watch out of pure spite because of this. I'm, you know, looking at directors like Greta Gerwig, Guillermo del Toro, and like all these people that film bros don't really talk about, because they don't watch films that are made by women. They don't watch films that are in different languages. And I think, if you open your mind up to those, like, to quote, oh my goat, if you get over that 1 inch barrier, you're open to a whole new world of film. And I think that like, it makes me more creative, it makes me more open to different stories, and it makes me appreciate film a lot more because I know how much time and effort and work that goes into a film. And, just some final words. I think I just want everyone to be more open minded. Take criticism with a grain of salt, but also don't make it your whole personality, especially if you don't know what you're talking about. But yeah, I'm just reading off some of the final words I have here. I hope Sinners sweeps the Oscars, and I pray for more stories like this, more from Ryan Coogler as well. I've actually been, I think I mentioned in the beginning, I've been actually consuming a lot of like vampire content, which I'm not complaining about. Which, by the way, AMC, if you see this, I love Interview with the Vampire. Thank you. Okay, I'm so ready for the Vampire Lestat show. Okay, I might talk about the two another day. And to end it off, I'm just going to be sharing some of the content that I personally consume that you can as well, to also just educate yourself and open your mind up to more perspectives. So I love books like the Legend Born series by Tracy Dion. This is a fantasy book revolving around the author, the King Arthur legend, and is very good. And as well as watching films like Parasite, which is a Korean film, and it talks a lot about classism and poverty, and as well as just listening to, other music that you might not listen to, like Bad Bunny, for example. That's a very hot topic right now. And, I haven't listened to him before, like actually go ahead and like listen to an album of his. I've always heard him on the radio. But if you go to his newer album, is a great piece of work. And I think if you're truly a fan of film and film history, I think you should really dive into different perspectives that, don't reflect your own, and like, or not your own community. And that will open so many doors for you. It has for me. And I hope to continue to do that, and here's to more creating more stories. And I hope you guys enjoyed this video as well. I know it's probably going to be super long, um but yeah, and towards the end I kind of started blabbing, but you know so if I post this on Halloween, happy Halloween. um Make sure to subscribe to this channel as well as my TikTok and Instagram, where I am a bit more active. And yeah, so maybe I'll do another one of these for Interview with a Vampire, We Live in Time. Those are all in the works right now. But yeah, so thank you so much.